I'm your host, Stephen Banover, here on the Sports Talk Line Network, where we talk sports 24/7, 365. Get your NFL draft cap on. Whatever you got to do to get ready, because we are here to talk NFL Combine, Best Worst, Defensive Edition, with NFL Draft Senior Analyst Connor Livesay. Connor, good evening, sir.
Good evening. It's good to be on you guys. It's been a crazy week at NFL free agency, so I'm back to get back to the roots of the NFL draft and really get back to what we're used to and what we all love.
Oh, man, and there's a lot to talk about here in the best worst, and people that help themselves and or hurt themselves in the combine with their performance. And we're not talking about exactly where they're going to go so much as how they have helped or hurt themselves. And let's start off with the best list, if we could, Connor. And I'm talking about DB Zedrick Woods from Ole Miss.
Yeah, Zedrick Woods is a guy who coming in, tape isn't all that great. He's a guy that's more of a in-the-box style of player, coverage skills, athleticism on tape didn't really show up, but he went out to the combine and ran the fastest 40 from the defenders at a 4.29. But I think when you look at some of his other drills, you have to look at him, and that shows up on tape. The 7-flat 3-cone drill is something that shows up on tape. The lack of lower body explosion on the jumps show up on tape. But that 4.29 in itself will likely get him on some draft boards that he might not have been on and get him drafted in the later rounds as a guy who can play in the box and move around and do some nice things as a special teamer style of player in the late rounds, at least a priority free agent at this point.
That's some impressive straight line speed, man. That's some serious jump, isn't it? I mean, like, wow, look at that guy go.
Yeah,
that was fun to look at.
Yeah, and I wish that athleticism and speed showed up more on the tape, but just having that number that teams can look at and see and watch him run, they're going to look at that and they're going to value it. And like I said, it's likely going to just bump him up a lot on people's boards because they see that straight line speed.
All right, well, another guy you wanted to talk about at safety. All right, let's stay on this side of the ball, defense, of course. Darnell Savage, Maryland. Talk to me a little bit about him real quick.
Yeah, Darnell Savage, safety out of Maryland. He is probably one of the most underrated prospects in this draft class. A guy you don't hear mentioned with the Deontay Thompsons, the Nazir Adderleys, the Taylor Rapps. He's one of the guys at the top of the draft as far as safety goes. A guy who can play free, he can play strong, he can play up, he can play down. Physical guy who just doesn't mind laying the wood if he has to, but he can also cover. He's got good athleticism, and that's one reason that he had a huge jump on my board, because he came out and had a really, really good combine to back up his tape. Some of my questions with him were about his athleticism. He came out and ran a 4.36 40-yard dash, a 39.5-inch vertical jump, a 126-inch broad jump, a 7.03 3-cone, and a 4.14 20-yard shuttle. Gotta love the size, gotta love the tape, and now you gotta love the athleticism. And that's why he had a big jump on my board.
He's an easy mover. You look at him in the dash there, man, and the way that he goes about his body movement. There's no stress. It's just easy movement. He's very relaxed, isn't he?
Yeah, good tackler, good in coverage. He can play man coverage. He has range. He can play free as well. So he's one of those versatile guys who can come in and play multiple positions in a secondary for a team, kind of in the early to mid second round is I think where he's going to end up going.
All right, well, let's get a little bit closer here. Let's actually get down in the pit, move up to an edge rusher, if you will, Montez Sweat, Mississippi State. And hey, there's a lot to talk about with this guy, yeah?
Yeah, I think Montez Sweat may have been the biggest winner of this combine. Coming in, you look at a guy who is an edge. He went to the Senior Bowl. He did some nice things at the Senior Bowl. But I don't think anyone could have predicted that Montez Sweat would have ran a 4.41 40-yard dash at 6'6", 260 pounds. Just the straight line speeds there. You saw the lower body explosion in the jumps. The 7-flat 3-cone drill is good enough. You'd have liked that to see a little bit lower, but no complaints. He really solidified himself as a first-round pick, a top 10 to 12 first-round pick. He's gonna be a really, really good edge rusher at the next level.
He powered himself through that 40. That was just so impressive to look at. I mean, that wasn't an easy movement. That was all power. This guy was jacked and ripped and ready to roll. He trained himself properly, and that is impressive in itself. It lets teams know that he can prepare for the next level, right?
Yeah, for sure. And he's a guy who went to the Senior Bowl, had a good week at the Senior Bowl. I just don't think anyone expected him to test that well. So that for that combine day in itself, with his attitude, with his Senior Bowl performance, made him have a big jump on my board. Went from kind of early second rounder to a
big jump indeed.
Yeah, clear cut first rounder on my board. A guy who has athleticism, he has pass rush, he plays the run, very good technique. A guy who's got all the tools to fit into that D forward style of role, I think, at the next level.
All right, well, staying in the box area at linebacker, you've got Devin Bush out of Michigan. What do you got to tell me about this guy? How did he help himself?
Well, see, the thing with Devin Bush is the narrative was that he was undersized, and that's not a false narrative by any means. He's a smaller linebacker. There's no getting around it. He measured in on the smaller side, but I think his testing is what really helped him. He came in at 5'11", 234, and his competition at the top of the linebacker board is Devin White from LSU, who is supposed to be just an athletic freak, but Devin Bush really tested just as well, if not better, than Devin White at the position. He ran a 4.43 40-yard dash, had 21 bench press reps, 40.5-inch vertical jump, 124-inch broad jump, 6'9", 3 cone, and a 4.2 20-yard shuttle. I really think he solidified himself as a first-round talent as well, and he made the jump from linebacker 2 to linebacker 1, and don't see that changing, because the tape was better than Devin White's, but I expected Devin White to test better, and Devin White still tested well, but with the better tape,
but not this well. Yeah. But now hold on, with this guy testing like he is, because like you said, he is a smaller linebacker, and that by no means is a bad thing. You think back to the New Orleans Saints. I mean, small linebackers can rock, but is someone going to be tempted, and does he have the coverage skills to take and turn him into one of those tweener safety linebacker hybrid elephant type guys that they move around?
No, I mean, I think he's an undersized Mike linebacker, a guy who can play sideline to sideline. He's good in coverage. It's something that a creative defensive coordinator could think about doing. But he's just a guy that I want playing sideline to sideline. Covering running backs out of the backfield. He reminds me a little bit. Don't quote me on this. It's not a comparison, but he reminds me a little bit of Roquan Smith that came out of Georgia from last year. Just an undersized version of him. A guy who plays fast, he plays hard, and plays sideline to sideline. Can play downhill, can make plays in the backfield as well. But a guy who I think is going to play in the middle of a defense for a long time and make a ton of tackles, make a ton of interceptions, force a lot of fumbles. A playmaker. That's what you're getting in Devin Bush.
I get where you're coming from. I actually, from what I've seen on him, and again, I don't want to say he is this guy, but with his intensity and the way that he sets up and the way that he plays sideline to sideline without a weak side, I look at him and I say a mini Mike Singletary.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm a younger guy, so I didn't see Mike Singletary play a lot, but trust me, man, I love Devin Bush. The one thing that his knock is he's undersized, but when you play that fast, you play that strong, you play that instinctive, it doesn't really hurt defenses anymore. We see these undersized linebackers have a ton of success, and I think he's just one of the next ones to come in and do that.
Oh, man, that's exciting time, man. I mean, there's actually the New Orleans Saints have a history of fantastic linebackers. I'm thinking Sam Mills that were undersized and guys like that. So who knows, man? That would be a great landing place for him. But enough of that. Let's switch to the other side and talk about a few guys that did not help themselves. And let's start out with the edge, Jachai Polite out of Florida.
Yeah, Polite had a rough combine. He came in kind of sloppy weight. He put on weight, but it wasn't good weight. He kind of looked sloppy, as all the reports that we're hearing. And then he ran his 40-yard dash, and people say he suffered a hamstring injury in that 40-yard dash, but there's been a lot of reports that he just, left the combine because he was kind of not feeling it. And that's not a good thing coming out of the combine. A guy that was a first-round player coming in, has first-round tape, but just didn't add good weight, looked unprepared, came to the draft, ran the 40, didn't put up a good time, and then kind of what people were saying, faked a hamstring injury, left Indianapolis, and that was the last we'd heard of him. So there's a lot of reports coming in about him not being a football mindset style of player, a guy who wasn't really a football guy that we call nowadays, breathe, eats, sleeps football. And these are just going to pile onto those question marks. So a guy whose tape's really good, one of the top edge rushers in this class, just in terms of the tape, but the athleticism was never a question, but just the showing up to the combine overweight, kind of sloppy, and then not testing well, and then faking an injury, it's not a good look.
Well, yeah, that's the same thing I'm hearing is basically he's a really great athlete. He is not a gym rat. And I mean, basically, you want a gym rat, man. You want a guy that eats, sleeps, and breathes what they do. And that's not what this guy is. He's just insanely talented.
Yeah, and like I said, it was disappointing to see him come in and run a 4.84. It just
that's mind-blowing, actually.
Yeah, and he was listed in school at 6'4", 245, 250 pounds. He came in at 6'3", 258, but again, all the reports are that he was sloppy. He had a 4.84 40-yard dash and a 32-inch vertical jump, and then he didn't do anything else and left. So
okay, well, it speaks for itself. It speaks for itself. Okay. Well, another guy we got is defensive tackle Dre'Mont Jones out of Ohio State. Similar story, similar situation, what?
He's just a guy that I expected to test well, and he didn't. It was kind of surprising because his tape shows an explosive interior defensive lineman, so I expected him to come in, run well, change directions well, and he did none of that. He ran a 5.12 40-yard dash, which was like...
One tech.
Yeah, but he's not. He's a 6'3", 280-pound guy.
That's three tech.
Yeah, he's not anywhere close to a one tech. Some teams are really gonna, I'm not gonna say they'll take him off the board, but he was a late first, mid-second round pick that probably dropped himself to the third, maybe even fourth round because of how bad.
That's a lot of money, man. That's a lot of money.
Didn't run well, didn't jump well, he had a 7.71 3-cone drill, so just a disastrous day for him. A guy that was a top 50 player on my board.
But he has good film, right?
Yeah, film's good. He's kind of a raw style of player. Remind me a little bit of Taven Bryan coming out last year from Florida, who went in the first round. But just the combine was atrocious, and it's going to affect his draft stock for sure.
All right. Let's move on to the last guy we're going to talk about, defensive lineman Charles Ominehu out of Texas. And this is, wow, what a story here. Because the guy was, I was expecting so much more, weren't you?
It wasn't a bad combine for Charles Ominehu, but he just didn't help himself to the point where I thought he would. 4.92, not horrible, but not great either. It was a pretty average around the board. The one thing that hurt was the 7.48 3-cone drill. A lot of teams have him playing the edge, and at a 7.48, that's going to kind of rule him out as being a consistent change of direction edge rusher. So he's probably going to move inside, play inside at the next level, and he's going to be effective. But he's got the length, he's got the size, but he's got to work on his athleticism and get more explosive off the ball and being able to change directions with his lower half.
And do you see him more of like in a 4-3 or a 3-4?
I think he could play in a 3-4 where he's not having to get up the field and rush the passer as much. But
a five position, something like that,
Yeah, a 5 tech, a shade, something like that. But I think a 3 technique and a 4-3 is probably what his money down's going to be. Is he'll be able to just fire off the ball, use his length, use that explosive nature that he plays with on tape.
Disrupt in the short zone.
Keep him close to the ball, let him use his length, let him use his power, let him use his snap quickness and stuff like that to get close to the quarterback, and I think that's where he'll make his money.
That's pretty darn exciting. All right, man. Well, look, as we sign off here, before we do so, why don't you take a moment and talk to everybody about how they can find you on social media and about what we're doing here as we follow up with next shows.
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Connor NFL Draft. We're still rolling with player interviews. We're still rolling with mock drafts, big boards, positional rankings. So make sure you're following all along with all the content we're posting on SportsTalkLine.com. Make sure you follow me on Twitter, post content there as well. So we got a lot of work to do. We got about a month and a half until the draft. So
it's going fast.
A lot of work in a short amount of time. So we're gonna
totally. All right, well, look, thanks everyone for taking time out of your day to be here. And you know, on whichever social media platform you're watching this, follow, subscribe, notify, post, tweet, retweet, whatever you have to do. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much. You're why we are here. And until next time, listen like you play with intensity.